Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. In today's episode we're looking at a brand new theme that's going to be coming out, and it's called the Draitrons. They're basically light machine based off the constellation Draco, which appear, but they're not Kaisers from the manga. Draitron Ban Alpha is a level 1 light machine effect monster with 2000 attack and 0 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned with a Draitron card's effect. You can only use this card's name's effect once per turn. 1. You contribute one other Draitron monster or one ritual monster from your hand or field. Special summon this card from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Then you can add one ritual monster from your deck to your hand. You cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate this effect, except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set. So the whole point of this archetype is to basically search out for their ritual monsters and the relevant ritual spell cards. This card benefits from having 2000 attack, considering for a level 1, but you have to also consider that the downside of it is that it is pretty much reliant on its own archetype's effects. It's not something you could easily splash into something else. But in this case, actually being able to search out for your ritual monsters that you want to bring out is quite decent, even if it's just for setup for the following turn. Again, the downside of it with these normal summon / set effects is you have to pretty much trigger them within your own archetype, trying to splash these in into other things. Even with the level of ritual support you get, just isn't particularly viable. The next card is Draitron Ras-Beta. It's level 1 light machine effect monster with 2000 attack and 0 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned with a Draitron's card effect. You can only use this card's name's effect once per turn. 1. You contribute one other Draitron monster or one ritual monster from your hand or field. Special summon this card from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Then you can return one of your banished Draitron monsters to the graveyard. You cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate this effect, except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set. So again, the point of this card, the first bit of the effect is the same as normal. This one has a little bit different in the second part of its effect, in that it's able to return one of your banished Draitrons to the graveyard. This can be useful further on within the duels, say that you've had to banish for multiple effects, and actually provides you with some kind of recovery without having to run, I think it's Pot of Acquisitiveness or something like that, which recovers your banished cards back to the graveyard. This helps to avoid going into, bad hands, bad testing hands, bad starter hands. The next card is Draitron El Gamma. It's a light machine effect monster with which is level 1, again 2000 attack, 0 defense, and it cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned with a Draitron's card effect. You can only use this card's name's effect once per turn. 1. You contribute one other Draitron monster or one ritual monster from your hand or field. Special summon this card from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Then you can special summon one Draitron monster with 2000 attack from your graveyard, except Draitron El Gamma. You cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate this effect, except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set. This card reminds me a little bit like Masked Chameleon, the ability to kind of summon itself, and then it's able to, in that case it summons a monster that has 0 defense in defense position. This is quite similar in that it requires you to summon a Draitron monster. This can hopefully be used with in conjunction to kind of support the archetype and to build up the field presence, or to be used to ritual summon. The next card is Draitron Lta-Delta. It's level 1 light machine effect monster with 2000 attack and 0 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set, and it must be special summoned with the Draitron's card effect. You can only use this card's name's effect once per turn. 1. You contribute one other Draitron monster or one ritual monster from your hand or field. Special summon this card from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Then you can reveal one ritual monster or one ritual spell card in your hand, and if you do, draw one card. You cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate this effect, except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set. So again, this card is based on the idea of there's that central theme to the deck, and the ability to draw into an additional card when it's summoned is quite decent, because you're actually replacing the card that you've tributed to summon this card, but also it just helps you to reach further into your deck, which is always a good thing. The next card is Draitron Al-Zeta. It's the last of the level 1 Light Machine effect monsters. It again has 2000 attack and 0 defense, and it cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned with a Draitron's card effect, and you can only use this card name's effect once per turn. 1. You contribute one other Draitron monster or one ritual monster from your hand or field. Special summon this card from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Then you can add one ritual spell card from your deck to your hand. You cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate this effect, except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set. So this is the other piece that I was talking about. You've got one monster within the archetype that has the ability to search out your ritual monsters, and this is the other piece which is able to search out for your ritual spells. This consistency enables you to go into multiple ritual monsters a lot more effectively, without having to run specific searches, such as I think you've got Manju and Senju, which have been used in the past when we've had previously not that much ritual support. Now they've tried to kind of strengthen how rituals work by either giving their ritual spells graveyard effects, or providing their ritual monsters with some kind of protection to at least make them a little bit more viable. The ritual monster is actually an incredibly powerful monster, and it's the only support ritual monster they have as of yet. It's called Draitron. Meteorness equals Dra, or DRA. It's a level 12 Light Machine ritual effect monster with 4000 attack and 4000 defense. You can ritual summon this card with Meteorness Draitron. You can only use this card named third effect once per turn. 1. Your opponent cannot target this card with monster effects. 2. If this card was ritual summoned using monsters whose total levels equal 2 or less, it can attack all opponent's special summon monsters once each. And 3. During your opponent's turn, as a quick effect, you can banish any number of monsters from a graveyard whose total attack equal 2000 or 4000, then target one face-up card your opponent controls. For every 2000 attack, send it to the graveyard. So this card has an incredibly stat line. Of course, for a level 12, it's going to have something like this. It needs to be quite impressive, and especially since it's their only go-to boss monster at the moment, it needed to be something that packs a bit of a punch. The first part of the effect, being unable to be targeted by your opponent's card effect, monster effects, is okay, but it would have been better if it had been spell, trap and monster, just to provide it with that extra level of protection. In certain decks where they run spell and trap destruction effects, these can be quite devastating for the deck. The other aspect as well is, depending on what your opponent is playing, they can actually work around this. There are monster effects that won't specifically target their cards or yours, but will actually focus on how their cards work. For example, I think Utopia the Lightning is a perfect example, being able to actually double its attack. This card has no battle protection to it, making it a 5000 attack monster, which means it can instantly just run over this and you are unable to do anything about it. The second part of the effect is actually quite decent as well. Being able to have that kind of, I think it's Ultimate Tyranno's effect, where it attacks every special summon monster, is quite decent. But again, note, it's every special summon monster. So if your opponent has normal summon monsters on the field, this card isn't able to do anything about that. So you're not specifically being able to clear everything. It would have been better if it had just been all monsters your opponent controls, but you know, we can't be fussy. It's quite a decent effect to add into this. And the third effect, this is why we're here, to be able to actually send cards your opponent has to the graveyard. Basically, you can essentially remove from play any of your Draitron monsters, and you can get rid of your opponent's cards up to 2 during opponent's turn. Considering this is a quick effect, it can react to what your opponent is doing. The kind of downside of it is most traditional quick effects activate between yours and your opponent's turn, which would have provided this card with more flexibility. But I suppose your opponent needs to be given the opportunity to be able to do something and to respond to this card. Getting rid of 2 of their cards by sending it to the graveyard is much better than destroying it, because this steps around the whole destruction effect part of some monsters, who will either have that level of protection to them, or float into other cards, or search other cards, which can actually help your opponent out. The other part of this effect, which can be a little bit annoying, is that it only targets your opponent's face-up cards. So if they're running things, and they've got things that are face down at the moment and can just trigger as a result of effects, then this card is also susceptible to that. The other thing is, of course, this card can, in its summon or its use of effect, be negated through cards such as the Solemn cards. So that's also something that you need to be aware of. Though saying this, you do have the ability with one of the Draitrons that can recover monsters to the graveyard, so you can constantly be recycling those cards without having to kind of run specific support cards. The next card is Draitron Fafnir. It's their go-to field spell, and you can only activate 1 of this card's name per turn. When this card resolves, you can add 1 Draitron spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, except Draitron Fafnir. 2. The effects of ritual spell cards and their activation cannot be negated. And 3. Once per turn, if a monster is normal or special summoned face up while you control a Draitron monster, you can decrease the levels of those face up summoned monsters by 1 for every 1000 attack they have, minimum 1 for the rest of this turn. So the first part of the effect is just your go-to kind of standard search effect, and this is quite useful because you can obviously just search into your ritual spell card if you want. The second part of the effect is also very key. Most of your opponents will try and negate ritual spell cards to prevent the summoning of a ritual monster to begin with. If they're smart enough to do that, that's what they'll try and do. But this card prevents that from actually working. So you're going to have to either do one of 2 things. Either you're going to have to let the ritual spell card activate, and then whatever they summon you have to try and negate before they can activate, or you have to get rid of this card before you can actually negate the ritual spell cards. And the final effect actually helps to disrupt your opponent. If they're running Xyz monsters or Synchro monsters and they need specific levels, by adjusting them with this effect, you can actually make it quite difficult for them to go into these cards. It won't have any negative effect against you, considering that your Draitron monsters are already level 1s, so that's not going to have any issue, as you can't decrease a level 1 lower than a level 1, you can't make it a level 0. It's against the rules of Yu-Gi-Oh! The next card is Meteor Draitron. This is the ritual spell card, which was mentioned in the boss monsters effect. This card can only be used to ritual summon any 1 ritual monster. You can only use the second effect of this card's name once per turn. 1. Tribute machine monsters from your hand or field, whose total attack equal or exceed the attack of the monster you ritual summon. And if you do, ritual summon that ritual monster from your hand or graveyard. 2. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 Draitron monster you control. It loses exactly 1000 attack until the end of your opponent's turn, and if it does, add this card to your hand. So the first part of this effect is actually quite useful. It's able to ritual summon whatever you want, essentially. But you are just getting rid of your machine type monsters. It's a little bit more, it's less of a specific ritual spell. You know, some of them like Garma Sword can only be used for the Garma Sword monster. This is more or less specific and actually can be splashed into a few things. The other thing is, of course, that the requirements aren't difficult. If you're getting rid of Draitron monsters, you're only going to have to get rid of 2, which is decent as well. You know, you're going to have multiple of those already on the field or in the hand to be able to use from the effect. The second part of the effect, well, the Draitrons have 2000 attack, so just making one of them lose 1000 attack for the rest until your opponent's end turn phase is actually okay, considering that you'll constantly be able to recycle this card. There are some archetypes that can do similar things. Key example is the Cyber Angels, but other than that, there aren't too many. The next card is Draitron Anova. It's a normal spell card. You can only activate one of this card's name per turn. You cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate this card, except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set. Special summon one Draitron monster from your deck, but destroy it during the end phase. The purpose of this card is it's a little bit like a Monster Reborn for the archetype, or a Call of the Haunted if you prefer. The Draitron, if it's going to be destroyed at the end of the turn, what you're going to do with it? You're going to ritual summon with it, you're going to do something with it, so that you get the benefit of this effect. Draitron Eclipse is a normal spell card. With the effect, you can only use this card's name's first and second effects once per turn each. 1. Target one Draitron monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. 2. During your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one Draitron monster you control. It gains 2000 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. So the first part of the effect enables you to recover one of your Draitron monsters. This can be useful. It could be the ritual monster, you might have lost it previously within the duel, or you could, and also the second effect enables you to, it has a graveyard effect which is also very good. Most spells now to be, you know, used or have any importance need to have a secondary effect to their name. Boosting your Draitron monster by 2000 attack means that it goes from 2000 to 4000 attack. That means you can ritual summon your ritual monster just using one Draitron instead of 2. The next card is Draitron Asterism. It's a quick play spell card. With the effect, you can only activate one of this card's name once per turn. During the main phase, target one Draitron monster or one ritual monster you control, and one face-up monster your opponent controls. The target you control loses exactly 1000 attack until the end of your opponent's turn, and if it does, destroy that opponent's monster. So this is supposed to be a bit more responsive. It's supposed to be a form of disruption to your opponent, because if you can identify kind of one of their key cards, you can get rid of this by just either making your Draitron monster turn to an 1000 attack monster, or your ritual monster go from 4000 attack to 3000 attack. Depending on what they're running and depending on how brave you feel, that's always an option to go for the ritual monster, but I would prefer, unless you're low on life points, to actually target one of your Draitrons to reduce its attack, rather than, of course, your boss monster. The next card is the counter trap card, Draitron Meteor Shower. You can only activate one of this card's name per turn. When your opponent would normal or special summon a monster while you control a ritual monster, you can negate the summon, and if you do, shuffle that monster into the deck. And this is a good way of actually disrupting your opponent. It's a secondary way of doing that. So not only can you now destroy your opponent's monster, with the previous card you can actually prevent its summon, so your opponent will have wasted one of their summons, and that can actually be enough of disruption to prevent them from going into the relevant combos. It does say here as well that you've got the Cyber Emergency, which is also being introduced within this pack for whatever reason. I know it has relevance to machine types, so I think that's why it's being used, even though I think it's supposed to be support for the Cyber Dragons mainly. What do you think of the Draitrons? Is this something you're considering running? Do you like the idea of Konami focusing a little bit more on ritual support and archetypes related to that? Or do you think this has come out of the blue a little bit? Whatever you think, leave your comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe.